What up, people? What up? What up? What up?
Hi.
How's everybody doing?
We're doing great.
Y'all all right in there?
They can't
They trapped in the mic.
answer us.
Trapped in the mic.
I don't know that song.
What's been our theme song lately? You my little boo thing.
So I don't give a hoot what you do say.
Girl, I know. You my
I'll
little
answer the
two-ting.
phone, and that's the first and only thing that he says to
I
me.
be
And
shooting that shot like a do
But
say.
then we
Girl,
both-
I know.
we
Tell
both
'em I'm-
forget
tell
the
'em I'm
lyrics.
next. Telling you find the sun.
Yeah, then we start mumbling.
Tell them I'm next.
How's it going, guys? I hope everyone's having a good week this week.
Oh, yes. And we just want to welcome y'all to the Habitual Podcast. I am David Useda.
And I'm Emily Useda.
And this podcast, it exists to be a catalyst for your self-awareness. And our goal is to always point you back to Jesus. So again, don't get offended if we talk about my man Jesus.
No, we love him.
We on that Jesus juice.
We are, but not the Kool-Aid.
We drinking that
we don't
Jesus
drink-
juice.
We don't drink the Kool-Aid.
That medium roast.
Okay. Did you get a coffee before?
I did. That's why I'm amped. I'm lit.
I had a feeling.
Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I'm gonna. All right, I'm gonna throw that
Well,
in there. That's
guys, we are 3 episodes into season 2.
Yes.
And today we have some guests with us.
Yes, we have some guests, but first, we just want to thank y'all for tuning in. We want to thank y'all for listening to this podcast.
Yes.
Want to thank y'all for following us. If you're not following us, man, if I catch you on Sunday at church, we're going to talk. I'm going to pray for you.
You
at
better
the
be
altar.
up to date, listening to all the podcasts.
Yes. So we thank y'all so much for your support. But yes, we have some friends on the podcast today. If you want to introduce it.
Yeah. So we have Lianna and Jonathan Ballard.
Hey, let's go.
Yay.
All right.
So I'm so excited for
They're like, what the heck?
David. He just discovered those buttons like a few episodes ago. And so now, like, that's it. We're done. Like, he does that the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm super excited about this one because I feel like we don't know y'all that well yet.
Yes.
We just know parts of your story, but we don't like know what it was like for y'all to walk through that. And so I'm just super excited. And not even just about your story, but like just your personalities. I'm excited to get to know y'all. So thanks for coming. I know you had to coordinate childcare and stuff, so
Yeah, thanks for having us.
yeah, you're welcome.
Absolutely.
So why don't we start off? Let's see, where do we want to start?
Well, I want to start off with y'all kind of just sharing a little synopsis of who y'all are.
Pretend it's the first day of school and you have to do your icebreaker.
That's what I was doing earlier. So
So you'll be a pro.
I'll go first, give you time to think about it.
Appreciate that.
I am a stay-at-home mom. We are attempting homeschool until school starts officially.
How's that going? Homeschool.
It's going.
Yeah.
But I heard you say you're also a student.
Yes, and I am part-time in school right now.
That's crazy.
So school started today for me with introductory post and all that.
What are you going to school for?
I'm wanting to go into palliative care.
Oh,
Palliative care.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Palliative care. What is that?
Essentially like hospice,
Okay.
but for people in treatment.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So people that like still need to be connected on ventilators and like in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
You're going to have to help me. I barely finished high school. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That it takes a special person to be able to do that.
It was what I wanted to do as a teenager. And then we got married right after I graduated. And I thought I was going to be in accounting. I
Yeah.
had a whole job for
Yeah.
6 years in accounting and went home to raise kids. And then, Elias got sick and we got to see all of that. And a lot of the nurses would ask, are you in the medical industry? Because you're catching on really quick. No.
You know all the terms.
yeah, all the time.
She
That's
got
how
it all
Emily
down.
is.
Yeah.
Emily knows every single term
I
out there.
am. I do. I think that also comes from like having crazy health anxiety. So I like
You have to know.
I have
Yeah.
to know. But
Yeah. And so then they asked me, like, are you going to do this afterwards? I was like, absolutely not. Like, I do not need to know how sick my kid really was. Like, I don't need that. I had my experience. That's all I need. And then how long, I think when our first battle buddy passed away after Elias did, and I saw the hurt and I saw like the lack of really information out there, I was like, well, I have the parent firsthand insight onto what they're going through, but in order to help them, I need the education too. So
yeah,
that's what
you need to be able to back it up.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going back. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
crazy. That's a beautiful thing. Like your purpose is fueled.
Yeah, and it's a fire. Like anytime I think about it, it just when I'm overwhelmed with the homework or I just want to go to bed, but it's 2:00 and got a paper due. It's like, well,
yeah,
I do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan,
Yes.
you want to introduce yourself and say hi?
Hey, I'm Jonathan. So we have a little family business, garage door and automatic gates. So that's what I do. Well, we started it like about 2 years ago, or 2.5. It's about 2. Anyways, that's what I do. We have gone rogue. Sold our house a couple years ago.
Nice.
We've gone rogue.
Yeah, RV life.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of getting old now, but
Is it?
Not really.
it has its
She's
days.
like,
she's like, I'm good.
It's kind of like less maintenance than having a full house that you got to
Except,
like.
don't you have to like empty your sewer like manually?
Yeah, the
That's
black
lovely.
Crazy.
I will say it's not that bad.
I would not
Oh,
want to
yeah.
empty
It's
out
because I'm
David's
not the one
doo-doo.
doing it.
Yeah,
He's doing
yeah.
it.
So the place we stayed at before here did not have like on site where I could just hook up and drain it.
Right.
I had to like put it in a wagon and
Whoa.
drag it and go dump it.
That's
oh
crazy.
that is
That's-
bad.
I was so tired of that.
That was
And we're
that was real
We're
bad.
talking like all the boo boo and all the.
Yeah,
all,
all of it.
everything.
all there.
That's crazy.
If it's
Oh, my
snowing
goodness.
outside, if it's raining outside, it's still got to get done.
So, David, what do you think? Want to move to an RV?
Nah, I'm all right.
Just the other day, he saw a little
okay.
mini one, and he's like, "Let's get that." And
I
go
said for
camping.
camping. I didn't
But
say for.
hey, even camping, even camping, you got to do it.
I'm trying to
So,
embrace the southern life. All right, I'm still adjusting.
He's got some cowboy boots, even though I say they're like fake cowboy boots because they only are like
Well,
ankle boots.
They're Chelsea boots, and I get laughed at every time I put them on.
But
when
they
I'm around
are
when I'm around a
Ariat
group of like
boots.
men that have actual cowboy boots on, they look at them and they like smirk and laugh,
How cute.
and they're like, and they're clean. Nah,
Nah, bro. You need to scuff them up a little bit to be respected down here. So before we get ahead of ourselves, why don't y'all share with the listeners the story or Elias's story and y'all's story?
You want me to?
Start.
Okay. Well, I guess it started with he was an unplanned pregnancy. We were 6 months. We were 6 months postpartum
Oh my
from our
gosh.
oldest when we got a surprise.
wow.
Almost
Yeah.
Irish twins.
Almost, yeah. Kind of ironic. I look back over that time and I see a lot of God like kind of prepping me for it.
Yeah.
So my grandmother passed away the March before, so it was just a couple months before, and there was a book I was wanting by Levi Lesko's wife. I can't think of her name. Jenny Lesko, I think.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so she had this book, and it was about their daughter because they lost their daughter when she was 4 to an asthma attack.
Oh.
And there was a period when we were in between churches, and the Leskos were who I listened to before
Yeah.
we found where to go. And so I had heard their story and had followed them. And when they, announced that she had a book, I was like, oh, I want this book. And I got it for my birthday.
Yeah.
And you hadn't even lost him at this point.
I hadn't even had him.
Yeah.
It was before we even knew we were pregnant.
Oh,
well,
wow.
it came in and I started reading it. It ends up being the same day we found out we were pregnant. But that morning, and my grandmother's death was still pretty fresh.
Mhm.
So I was reading it and she was talking about how she had to leave the hospital without her daughter.
Mhm.
And I closed it. I was like, nope, too soon. I remember walking out after my grandmother.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And then there was just several things that day that made me kind of cry. And Jonathan, I was like, go get me chocolate. And he was like, take a pregnancy test.
Oh.
And that's how we found out.
That's
and
crazy.
So then he went to get another test because I didn't believe it. And then he came home with the chocolate donuts. But
Aw.
so that's kind of Elias's start. And then towards the end of my pregnancy, he stopped moving. And Ethan had done he had done that. And it turned out he had already had like a bowel movement inside. And so his was a sign of distress, which led to like an emergency C-section, all the things. So when Elias started doing that, I went to triage, like nervous wreck. They're like, nope, he's good. Go ahead, go home. So that happened twice. And then he came out perfectly healthy. Delivery was great. It was just, kind of what you wanted from the first one.
For sure.
But, and we had, it was about 2 weeks in, maybe 3. Jonathan had gone back to work and Elias had fallen asleep in my arms. So I'd got up to go put him in his bed. So that way, because I had one clinger, I didn't want another one. So I was going to try to sleep train from like the start.
A little Velcro baby.
And he turned into my Velcro baby. But I just remember looking down at him in my arms and his face was so peaceful.
Mm.
I just can't explain it. My heart broke. Like I felt my heart break. And I was like, okay, whatever. But I held him for that nap and the next nap because every time I would look down, like I would feel this, like my heart breaking.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it to my mom after probably about a week. And I was like, Mom, like, is this normal? I didn't have this with Ethan, but I know, postpartum period is weird. And I don't want to say it to my doctor and get my kid taken away. Like they think I'm crazy, right?
Yeah.
So she was like, well, maybe you just need sleep. And then this went on for a while, a couple months. And then finally she was like, well, God might be trying to tell you something. And I just remember, I don't know if I have offensive faith. I don't know how it is, but I kind of just tell God how I feel. He can see my thoughts anyway. So I was like, you can take that back. Like, I don't accept your warning. You gave me him. I wasn't trying for him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's wanted now, but it wasn't something I was searching for beforehand.
Yeah.
You gave him to me. So he's mine. And that feeling kind of went away. And I was like, oh, thank God it was just hormones, right? Like it wasn't anything. But then came his first birthday and it was the actual day of his first birthday. I'm kind of crazy with schedules and I want everything as efficient as possible. So I scheduled his first appointment on his first birthday. I will never do that again. And they went in and they checked his hemoglobin and it was like a 6. They're like, oh, that's crazy low. Like, we're going to run it again. So they
What is it normally?
I think it's supposed to be 10. But it was like.
It was significantly low.
Yeah. And so they're like, the doctor came in and was real nonchalant. She was like, I'm going to send you to go get blood work done just to see maybe what was going on. I have iron issues, so I just thought maybe I passed it to him and he was going to need like a transfusion or supplement or something. And I remember asking the nurse, I was like, hey, like we're going to Great Wolf Lodge today. Can I do this on Monday or Tuesday? And she's like, I would probably do it today. So I go home to Jonathan and I'm like, well, let's just load up. We'll go to Cook's on our way to Grapevine and, just get it taken care of on the way. You can go get the snacks and stuff for our trip while we're in there.
Yeah.
And we do all that. I remember going in and it's just kind of, you don't really think anything of it. It's just kind of normal. And then I remember I have a picture of him in the Dodson Center, like looking over and it really breaks my heart that was his first birthday was in the hospital.
Yeah. Just
like the day of his birth. And we get back in the car and I'm just like, well, let's just go, like try to forget about it. We get to Great Wolf Lodge and I run in, I check in because it's under my name. Jonathan stays in the car with the kids and then I come out and he goes in to get changed and, so we can go to the water park. And while he's in there, I get a notification that the results are ready. And I open them. And like everything was drastically low except for his white cells. Those were like astronomically high. And like immediately I know it's cancer. And I call my mom and I'm like screen recording so she can see what the labs are. She's rating him. And she's like, well, like he's getting over being sick. Like this is just normal. Like, it's okay. Like, trying to calm me down.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
I think she knew too, but she was trying to keep me calm.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so I'm like, no, I'm not dealing with this. So I get off the phone with her and call my sister. And I'm like, at this point, I have no voice. I can only whisper. And I just say, Karen, I think it's bad. And again, I'm showing her the results. And she goes, don't Google it.
Oh, no.
I was like, I don't need to.
Oh, no.
I know, I know what this means, right?
Yeah.
And then about that time, I'm like, oh, Jonathan's calling, or Jonathan's coming. Like, I gotta go. I was like, I'm not gonna tell him. We're gonna go through the weekend, and we'll deal with this Sunday.
Kind of bickering back and forth too.
Yeah.
Like,
So he gets to the car, and you have your way of unloading, and he has another way of unloading. And so like we're kind of going back and forth over, no, do it this way. Oh, fine, I'll do it this way, whatever. And the phone rings, and I see it's his pediatrician.
Yeah.
So I just kind of step to the side and I answer it. And I remember noticing like, oh, it's his doctor's voice. It's not a nurse. Like, red flag. Like, normally nurses are the ones who call you back, or admin. And she was like, so we got his results. And I don't remember exactly how she said it, but next thing I know, I hear her voice crack. And she say, it's not supposed to be this way. Because she knew we were at Great Wolf Lodge. Like, she knew our plans. We had talked about it. We had been joking just a few hours earlier. And her voice cracks. And she says, I hate to tell you this, but we believe Elias has cancer. And they're waiting for you downtown at the hospital, in the ER. There's a team ready. And I was like, no, like, we just got here. And she's like, I'm sorry. They're waiting for you. You don't get to go. You got to pack back up.
I like feel that.
Yeah, I'm feeling that tension just
in my chest right now.
Everything stopped. Like, nothing else mattered at that point.
Yeah.
I remember seeing parents fighting with their kids, kids misbehaving, excited to go play, and the parents getting frustrated, which I 100% relate to. But I remember in that time, I was just, everything was in slow motion, but fast at the same time.
Yeah.
And I just been like, I wish I could be fighting my kids to get them in the door,
Mm-hmm.
But I tap his shoulder. So meanwhile, the doctor's still talking in my ear, like,
did he have he had no idea.
Yeah. So he's starting to get Elias out. Funny enough that it was that side that you were on. And I like tapped his shoulders and I'm crying. Like there's just tears. I'm not really saying anything. So he was oblivious to all of this. And I like tap his shoulders and he turns around because remember we were bickering. So he's like, what? And then he sees my face and he's like, oh my God.
Gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't remember. Do you remember what I told you?
Leukemia. That was all I
Like
remember
just
saying.
leukemia. And then I hear like I'm trying to portray to him, and then like he's walking off, and then I'm like, you can't walk off. Like I've got all this stuff.
Right.
I
Like
didn't really know what leukemia was. Like I had to look it up. I had no idea.
yeah. And the whole time I have the doctor just giving me like scientific facts about like what this is and all that.
Yeah,
and
you're like, I can't.
yeah,
right now. Yeah.
And I'm like, all I can think is it's his birthday. Like it's his birthday. And she's like, well, do you want me to talk to your husband? And I'm like, lady, you don't want to talk to him right now.
Yeah.
No.
Like, I don't even really want to talk to him about this right now. So yeah, we get off the phone, we rebuckle Elias back in. And, at this point, we're both just frantic. Like, we're stuck in flight, but like, we're not really going anywhere. But like, we're just going in circles,
Mm-hmm.
And I call my mom and I'm like, you were wrong. I think the daughter in me had to like point that out. Like, I was right.
Like, great job consoling me.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, so I'm bringing you Ethan because it was COVID during that time. So I couldn't have him there. And we didn't know what we were walking into.
Right.
So I make plans to meet my mom back there. And I think at that point she was with a friend. Looking back, I wish I would have been a little bit more gentle, but I think I was just stuck and scared, And I think she and her friend had a few minutes to process through what was coming. And so when I called her, she wasn't surprised. Like, I think she knew it too. So she met me back at her house to get Ethan. And on the drive, he calls his parents.
That would have been like the last time Ethan and I saw each other for almost 2 months?
No,
A month and a
over
half.
because we didn't go home till March. Oh, well, no, because he came up. Yeah, probably about 2 months.
Well, they saw each other through the window one time, but
So this
Yeah.
is what, like January?
January 14th.
January 14th.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we make the phone calls. My mom's, okay, who do you want me to tell? Like,
Yeah.
we're in planning mode. We're in figuring this out. And I just said, well, I want to tell my sisters. You go ahead and tell, like, the grandparents. Obviously, my stepdad. We'll touch base once we know something. Right now, we just know it's bad, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So then I call my sister, on the way. I'm now sitting in the back seat with Elias, and there's traffic because it's Fort Worth. And I call my sister and I tell her, and she's like, why are you joking? Like, this isn't even funny. And I was like, Ren, I'm not being funny. This is for real. This is happening. And she's like, I'm not talking to you. And got off the phone.
Oh,
like,
no.
Like, that's just her response, right?
Yeah.
And she was just like, shut up. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I wish. Like, that's what I'm screaming inside too, right?
Yeah.
Like, shut up. I don't
Like,
want to
this
hear
is
it.
a joke. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get to the hospital and like
there's no waiting rooms. We go straight back to the room.
Wow.
Like,
well, and I remember like on the check-in, like you have to put a reason for coming in, right? And I'm like, I don't even know how to spell leukemia.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many weird letters, like combinations in there, like vowels and stuff. So I was like, she's like, just put hematology. I'm like, well, I don't know how to spell that either right now. Like,
Cancer.
Yeah. And I was like, your mind is, everything goes out the window. You just got to get your baby to the doctor.
Of
Like,
course.
the doctor's going to fix it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we go straight to a room. And that just kind of, once they realized it was his birthday, you could kind of see like everybody's face is just like, oh.
Yeah.
a few of the nurses went and got some like posters and like wrote happy birthday on it and
Aw.
stuff.
They went and got him a teddy bear that we
Yeah,
still
that's
have, a balloon. But, then starts all the preemptive testing because they have to get a baseline because obviously we're putting poison into his body to fight the
Yeah.
cancer
Right.
coming up next. So they need to see heart function, liver, kidneys, everything. They're needing blood panels, all the things. So he got poked, like shots, needles, all that, probably 18 times?
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it took like 3 of us to hold him down.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh.
I had to
And
hold down an arm. I don't know. Were you holding down the other side? don't
I
know.
was just laying
It was
over him.
like-
Yeah. Because like at this, he's completely
strong.
healthy. Like
There was
I
like
mean,
no indication
no. Well,
outside.
looking
No.
back, we see the signs, but they were
Like
also normal
bruising.
baby.
Like, I mean, they were
Mhm.
brothers wrestling. They're going to get bruises and stuff.
Right.
but-
Mm-hmm. He was
Yeah.
a little boy, so.
Yeah. And then like apparently lack of sleep, like he had went through a sleep regression. And I just thought that was normal 1-year-old stuff. Ethan did the same thing. But apparently that's a symptom. And I'm not going to go through all the symptoms because then all the parents are going to be freaking out and
God.
calling
Yeah,
their
for
parents.
Yeah.
But like looking back, I can
It's
see
a combination of all the
yes, that's all the
symptoms. Yeah.
things. It's not just all But now, like when I hear a friend say something, I'm like, "What's their ANC? Like, can you go get them blood
Dr.
work?"
Lianna,
No, but
he had COVID on top of all that.
Oh, no.
yeah, he was recovering. Like, I don't think he was. That was like 2
It
weeks. It was
just
at
tested
Christmas.
positive, so
Yeah, he
parents
was-
sent us up to the COVID floor for
Yeah.
like 3 weeks.
Oh yeah, 21 days. It was
Strict isolation, like family, no visitors, nothing.
we had to get a security escort in and out of the hospital.
Wow.
We couldn't go anywhere. I
Yeah.
couldn't leave the room. If I was leaving the room, there had to be a security guard to like walk us out. We were in a room smaller than this room for 21 days. And we kind of already referenced that he was my Velcro baby. So I think I left 2 Sundays for church and
Yeah.
that was it. But going back to that hospital room, it was kind of a funny foreshadowing. I've never really been into music. It kind of overstimulates me, which I know I'm probably alone on that. But
It depends what kind of music.
yeah, well, especially being in like the young mom, like there's a kid crying, there's a toy going off, like music just was not in it for me. But when I was laying over Elias with all the people holding him down, a nurse a leg, all the things, I just heard the lyrics to Good Father
Mm.
in my heart. I'm a good father. I'm perfect in all of my ways. And I just remember like seeing that in my head, my heart, and like crying. And I don't know, later you realize like God was giving me my like my battle cry. He was like, this is how you're going to get through it. But like in the middle of the chaos, like I felt God like right there, which is just so funny that he chose a song because I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's how, like, looking back, you know it's him because it wasn't like a quote from a podcast I had heard or a line from a book. It was a song. And for the first few months, that song, anytime we got bad news, and we got a lot of it, that song, like, okay, well, he was good in the ER, so he'll be good in the PICU. He's good on the, HO floor, he'll be good in the PICU. So that was just one of those, like, God winks that I got because I couldn't pray. I didn't have the words. I didn't know what to pray. You're just reeling. All I know is, God, like, this isn't good, but you're telling me you're good and you're perfect. So I'm going to cling to that. And you could make this cancer. I mean, I probably did pray that a million times. You could just make this cancer disappear. Like, you could just speak the word and it'll be as if there's no evidence of it. It's not what he chose to do. But
do you feel like you went through a season of like legit being angry at the Lord because he didn't choose to do it?
I don't think I did. I had a season, well, I can't say it was a season, it was a day after Elias passed where I felt anger, which is not a standard emotion for me, even in everyday life. I kind of go through everything else, but anger's not one of them. And this day, I don't know if you remember, we were at the ranch and I had to text Jonathan like, hey, you got to come get Ethan. I've got some feelings I need to get out, and I need to get them out in a way where I can say what I need to say and not affect Ethan. Because grieving in front of a child, we're very real. He sees us cry. He sees we use real words, all the things.
Yeah.
But you also have to be careful not to put too much on him, right? So I had text him like, hey, I'm tapping out. I need you to come get him. And I just went through all of the pictures. And it was like I went from like the baby pictures, and cancer stole my baby. And then, bone marrow stole my toddler. And then death stole my child. Like I went through like looking at the progress, and it's insane to look. Like, how Apple on the photos, it gives you like folders for faces. Yeah. Elias probably has 5 folders because that's how drastically his looks changed over the time. And I got it out in the like saying it and looking at the pictures and speaking it out, right? And I'm doing it with God, and it was never at God. It was just with him.
Yeah, that's beautiful though.
I realized in that moment, my anger was more with sin, and sin is what did this. This is a consequence of living in a broken world that none of us can fix. One day it will be, but right now we're not. We're in the broken part.
Yeah.
And I remember I had that feeling, and I'm texting a friend at like kind of the whole part, like the play-by-play. This is what happened, and this is what happened. And then at the end, I'm like, but God didn't do this. Sin did this, and God redeemed this. God is why I can get through this. And then that night at bedtime, Ethan had a major meltdown, like major fit, just anger. And he's hitting his pillow and he's doing all these things. And I'm just like, this isn't a normal fit. Like I could feel that there was something deeper.
Yeah.
And then finally he just said, Howie should be here.
Oh.
And it was like I had to experience the anger because Ethan was about to, and I had to coach him through it and give him, like, I had to guide him through that on how we're going to handle that. And in that moment, like, I let him, like, yell what he needed to yell. And I just said, buddy, this anger you're feeling, God feels that too. Because sin was never a part, it was never supposed to be like this. And that's what happens, and there's a consequence. So we can't do anything to change Howie's death. We can't bring him back. And even if we could, he wouldn't want to. But what we can do is that anger we feel, we can direct it in the right place. And that's the devil. Like, that's our enemy.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do, anytime we feel that, we're going to go find somebody and tell them that Jesus loves him.
Yeah.
And we're going to take back one person, And so
if we could just pause for a moment, I think that is just that's so profound when you think of I think of this song that says God of the impossible, and we preach this on a Sunday basis, and we talk about this, and we live for a God who can take an impossible situation and make it possible, and we put our faith and our trust in that God. And then we have a situation that he could easily fix, but it's not his will. And I think it's just so profound that you can have that understanding and still look past it and say, regardless, God is still a good father. And I think that's so profound. And I think that's also very powerful, because I know for us, when we had the miscarriage, I just remember that night I went to get food, and I was like to the Lord, this is some bull, you know. I was just like, this is ridiculous. And then on top of that, January of last year, we had the 21-day prayer here, and I was praying, and I was asking for like a fresh move of the Spirit. And Lord, I want something new. I want something fresh. I want something powerful. And the Lord is like, that's great. You know, you're scared to be a dad, and I need you to give that up. And
Jesus literally said, not around here, partner, not around here.
So he was like, I need you to renounce that fear of being a father. A couple months later, we're pregnant. Then we lose the baby. And I'm just like, bro, come on. How you just make me give up the fear of being a father. Then we become parents. Then we lose the baby. What was all that for then? What was the point of all of that? And I just think that your response is so beautiful, because most people will go anger themselves like I did, anger themselves to the Lord and say, why couldn't you do nothing? This is unfair what you're doing. We'll even go to the extent to use those kind of words. And I think it's just beautiful. I think it's a testament to know that there is, in the pain and in the suffering, that we can still look past what is not within our control. That we can still look past the things that are outside of our control and still look at God as a faithful, loving Father.
Yeah.
And that he's going to hold us.
And don't get me wrong, when we got the diagnosis, I told, like, so everybody's like, oh, you got to pray God's will, pray God's will. Like, sorry, I'm not. There is one way, it is healing.
Absolutely.
And just like I told him when I had that feeling when he was a baby, I'm like, I'm sorry, you're going to. There's no other option, and I'm not going to pray your will. And looking back on the whole, it was 10 months that we were, battling this. I see how God was like, oh, is that what you think? And like, towards at the end of his life, he's on life support. It's bad, I remember that moment I for the first time said, God, your will. And it was one of those moments where I had been putting it off. He had already changed my heart posture to where it was my heart posture. And I remember praying, and I was like, the wind and waves know your name. Your voice does not return to you void. Like all these things, right? I'm praying. And he's like, well, then why can't you say my will?
It's crazy.
You're like, because that's my baby.
Because I'm scared of your will. Like, if I'm being honest, like,
sure.
Oof, that is, how many times are we actually scared of the will of God? Like, that just hit me somewhere so deep. I had a question, too, like, based off of kind of what you were saying earlier and then what David spoke. Whenever you're talking now, I'm hearing you, like, correct yourself or land on faith after you'll say something and then you'll say, but God's will, or but this. Did you always have a firm foundation of faith, like even before you went into this, or did it kind of like in the healing process? Is that whenever things kind of started to click? Does that make sense? What I'm okay.
Yeah, you definitely grew a lot. From
it
when
was
that started to now.
It was a journey, and I can see where, like, in the beginning, I had faith, but it was like, I'm still going to control it. Like, I have faith you're going to make this work out. Like, I don't know how you're going to do it, but you're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
And I've really learned to, okay, you will hold me through it. And I remember the first time that hit me, that I was going to be okay, even if he didn't choose to hold Elias. And I was angry. I guess there was anger there. I was angry that I was going to be okay because I knew it was true. He had brought me through so much in my life up to this, nothing comparing. But, you know, we had gone through some hard things.
For sure.
And even in the, you know, the 9 months that had led up to this point, I had seen how God had carried me through where people are like, oh man, I couldn't imagine. And I'm like, yeah, I can't imagine and I'm living it, you know? Like, so yeah, I think it turned from more of like I don't know if it was defiance or if it was just, you know, like that teenager attitude, like, you're my dad, you're going to give me $10. Like, and then it turned into like, okay, I love you and I know you have my best interest at heart. So yeah, there was always a relationship with God, but I think it became, I don't know what I would say, more soft.
Yeah. Because I guess a better way for me to phrase what I'm saying is like you're reconciling yourself. Like you're reconciling your experiences and your thoughts to the Word of God. And, you know, listening to you, it's really impressive.
Yeah, I think that came probably after he passed. Or probably the lead up, the last month.
So how long has it been gone now?
Almost 2.5 years.
Yeah. 2.5 years?
October of 22 was 22 when he passed.
So how old was Ethan whenever Elias passed?
Way to do math.
Was,
3.
3.
Yeah, just turned 3.
And 3.
So I guess I'm kind of like shifting into like the process after the fact. So what are some things you noticed in Ethan after?
I mean, he talks pretty openly about his brother like all the time.
Sometimes we don't want him to.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, how he's in heaven now, just telling random people like.
Well, that doesn't bother me. It's when he's like, my brother's dead.
Oh no!
Oh man, yeah.
Like
out of the word.
He'll just tell like a random kid at the playground, and I'm like, that's awkward. I'm not going to explain that one.
He had cancer.
Yes.
Yeah, like
I love the honesty of kids,
but I think he's become a little bit more scared. He's definitely, especially in the beginning, he clung more to us. Because during those 10 months that we were in the hospital, I was mainly in the hospital with Elias. Jonathan was working. So Ethan went between my parents and Jonathan's parents. So there was a lot of like custody, you know, switching for him. And it was definitely an uncertain time for him.
That's kind of that was going to be kind of my question with Jon, like navigating what's going on at home and being able to do your duties and responsibilities as a provider, as a husband. Like,
oh, that's a good question.
What was that? I'm just gonna say, what was that weight like?
So
like, what was?
Now, I have a lot of regret with how much I worked because I could have chosen not to work. I could have chosen to be there more. But in the moment, it was also an escape for me because I could get away from everything, and that's definitely a selfish way of saying it. But
it'd be like that sometimes, though, you know?
So, I mean, whenever we got the diagnosis, the treatment plan we went with, they're like 97%, you know, make it. So I'm like, okay, that's good odds. I'm going to keep working so that we don't get behind on bills.
But now we know that's a skewed number.
Yeah.
That wasn't a very honest number.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was, and I don't even know how it went from, was it just that one treatment plan and then we went to the more traditional later? Yeah,
he, with that plan, it like brought his odds up like 7%. But like when you're the parents, you're like 7%, heck yeah. Like anything to make it better. But he failed to reach remission on that plan. So we got kicked off of it. So he doesn't count towards that 3%.
Oh.
So it's kind of a
loophole there.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. But yeah, that was, so I'm thinking if we're going to get through this, like it sucks. It's not fun. Like there's a lot of hurt and pain, but we can get through this. I'm going to keep working.
For sure.
Now, obviously, I'm like, I wish I would never gone to work. Like through that I would figure out the bill situation later. Yeah. There's a lot of regret there.
Yeah.
A lot.
But I think when you're grieving, it just doesn't look like a certain way. You just kind of respond the way you feel like you need to respond in the moment. That's one thing that I've learned about grief is just like with grief, it's so unexpected. It's unpredictable. You just don't know. You just think you're doing something necessary to provide X, Y, and Z. Meanwhile, you don't realize that your body is just trying to grieve and doesn't know how. You know,
it just like pops up out of nowhere too. Like,
yeah,
I think this was like 5 or 6 months after he passed. I don't remember. We were going to one of our little friends' like dance recitals, and I was just parking the car out in the parking lot. I dropped them off at the front door, and as I was walking, like all I could hear was like these scissors like snapping in my head, and that was whenever he was taking off life support. They had to cut the line, and that's what ended it. So like, she can't ever hear it. She doesn't know what I'm talking about, but to me, like,
you still hear it.
Dude,
it's not
it's like a little PTSD.
About.
Yeah,
it just like echoes. Like I just parked the car and I was just walking up to go see a dance recital, and just like out of nowhere, I was like, oh my gosh,
that's
like,
crazy.
Yeah, but that's one of my little things that happened.
Do y'all feel like grief looks a little differently now than what it did before, or do you feel like it kind of just still
like from the beginning of
like from the beginning to where y'all are at now? Do you feel like grief has kind of changed in certain ways, or
I think we understand it better now.
Okay, and it's kind of old.
It's,
like
at first,
this again.
Yeah,
yeah.
At first, it's like you're not even your normal
absolutely
person. Like
you're in shock.
I'm looking back now, like why did I make those decisions? Like,
I always like to say that you were doing the best that you could with what you had at the time.
Yeah.
You know? And so I also think too that it's super common well, first off, my mom is a therapist and has always told me that yes, there are stages to grief, but it doesn't come in the certain line. It comes at different times, different phases, just in and out. And so
and it's not done. You can go through the same phase multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I've definitely come to terms with that in regards to our miscarriage. I'm grieving for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of it, because that was something that was so significant to us. And
we were so excited.
And grief is just stored up love that you could not express, I feel like, is what grief is in a way. And so I just feel like little by little, as we go and we grow older and we're sitting on rocking chairs and seeing little kids by and cursing them out, I'll still be grieving.
It's like there should be another one.
Yeah.
There should be another one running around.
Yeah.
And
there's
we were
not.
so young. I remember when he passed, I was like, I'm too young for this. I still have another 40, 50 years left, and I have to carry this. It was very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of which question I want to do first. So obviously y'all had a great support system. What about after the fact? Obviously it's still those people, but what else? Like, how did y'all keep moving? Like, how did y'all keep going? Like, did y'all go into therapy? Did y'all, I know you started, were you already at Calvary Church?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been at Calvary 6 years now.
Oh, okay.
But we were not plugged in. We were just kind of flirting with the church.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we would come on Sunday and we'd leave before it was over. And
so, you went on a couple dates with the church.
Yeah, it was a long courtship.
What are some things that y'all have learned after this, I don't want to say after this experience because you're still very much experiencing it, but in the journey? Like, what are some things that you've learned are essential for, your mental health, for your survival, for your process of grief, different things like that?
I don't know. You definitely have to give the other person grace. And she's probably given more to me than I've given to her, but that was, you act out. Like,
you say things that you don't necessarily mean. And I think we've gotten really good at saying, you're not the enemy. You're not what I'm frustrated with right now.
That's good.
You're just my person. So I'm sorry. Preemptively. Another thing is taking walks outside.
Yeah. Fresh air.
Even if it's raining. That has been a big one. And then another one is just being really real with God.
Mm-hmm.
When he offends you, just tell him, because he'll make it right. like he'll let you know like
Yeah.
you're misunderstanding that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the verses, I'm sure y'all have had it, you know, God uses all things for good.
Yes.
Um,
girl, yes.
That one, it just stings a little bit.
It does.
And one night,
But it's true.
it's true,
But it hurts.
but it's not necessarily appropriate to say,
right. No.
And one night, everybody was asleep, and that verse was just on a loop in my head. I was being tormented with it. Like, it was just over and over. And finally, I was just like, God, can I be real? Like, that really offends me. Like, I know you're good. I know you are. I know you will use this. And, like, that really offends me. And clear as day, I just heard him say, well, you can choose to be offended or you can choose to hold me to it. And that has been, I think that moment specifically was when, like, you get free when you express it. Like, a lot of times in Christianity, we want to sugarcoat it. We want to rush to the healing.
Right.
And I've accepted that I'm not going to be fully healed this side
For sure.
of heaven. I am going to walk with some type of limp. And that doesn't mean that I have less faith or I trust God any less or I don't love him or anything. It just means that I trust him enough that I can be real
Yeah.
with what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are like, oh, he can handle your emotions. Like, but he'll also correct you when you've gone a little too far. And I remember in the early days, I maybe went a little too far. And I got this picture of like how vast God was. And I was like, whoop, I'm sorry. Like, it kind of like, but like there's that balance.
It grieved you, like it.
Yeah.
Lament.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking to myself right now, I'm just thinking to myself, kind of like what you're sharing of just that we don't seem to get the picture as a body in Christ, that suffering is guaranteed out of all things that are promised, right? Jesus says, in this world you will have trials and tribulations. But then he says, take heed, for I've overcome the world. It's not to say that he's going to take those troubles and tribulations from us. It says I'm going to help you navigate them. I'm going to help you walk through them. And I think that is such a sobering thing to know, because we can read through all of Scripture and we can always find somebody is suffering. Somebody is going through something, and it's never taken away, right? Paul talks about the thorn on his side, and he prayed for it 3 times, and God never took it from him. And so instead he uses that as a strength to get him to cling to Jesus and stay close to God. And I just think that navigating troubles in life would be so much easier for all of us if we were to accept that those hard moments that we go through in life, that's not the end of us, and we can get through that. But as we go through it, there's something that God wants to teach us in it.
Yeah.
You know? And so I just like that you brought that up, because so many people, I mean, when we've gone through our heartaches, so many people would say, you know, cling to him, don't lose hope in him, you know, don't I had somebody tell me once, you know, don't give up on him. I'm like, that's not my issue. My issue is I'm a human being going through some stuff, and I don't know what to do.
And people want to prescribe
and
that.
People want to prescribe that to say that's what's going to help you. Meanwhile, Jesus is saying that's not going to help you. What's going to help you is I've overcome the world. So let me lead you through this, because I don't want
love and my closeness and my companionship.
Right.
And,
he's near to the brokenhearted. It doesn't say he takes the pain away from the brokenhearted. It says he's near to the brokenhearted. And so I just think that in this season of our lives, I'm learning about suffering. I'm learning how to navigate suffering, because I think for too long we think the victory that at the top of the mountain there's always the victory, but really it's an opportunity to either refuse or accept God on the mountain. That's what you'll always find, is an opportunity to accept him or refuse him, you know. And so I just think that it's helpful to know that that no matter what we go through in life, if we lean into him, he won't take it from us. There's a good chance that he might want to just walk us through it and teach us something in the process.
So how are y'all honoring him after his death?
There's couple different things. We got the blood drive, which we do on his birthday.
That's
it was
cool.
a pretty good turnout this year.
Yeah.
First year, what was the number the first year?
I don't know. It was
I'm pretty sure I did it.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
It was well over 200, but we had 3 different drives, 2 different ones here, and then one in New Hampshire where my family's from.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we've done that now 3 years.
Yeah, he had to have like 160 something blood transfusions during the 10
Wow.
months.
Well,
Wow.
blood products, so it was blood, platelet,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Terms. She
Yeah.
knows.
plasma.
He's like, give me my space.
Blood products. Yep.
But and then she puts together a toy drive. Had a really good turnout this last year too. That was
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. We take a whole bunch of toys and stuff up to the kids on the oncology floor
And
at
socks,
Cook's.
because hospital socks are not it.
Oh,
But they have to have-
really?
They're awful, and you have to have grippy socks because
Yeah.
with chemo and all the things, it really affects their balance and their walking
fall
and stuff.
risk and stuff.
Yeah,
And
so-
being 1 years old.
yeah, there's that too. So we get a bunch of grippy socks that are like good quality
Yeah.
from Amazon.
Man, I had to wear grippy socks when I had a surgery, and let me tell you, those things were actually pretty good
Yeah.
at the hospital I was at. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not impressed. So little mom and me, I'm like,
Yeah.
every kid gets a
But
pair
you
of good
see the
socks.
little details in it,
Yeah.
you know? So do you feel like this has really lit a passion in you
Yeah.
for people that are experiencing that?
Yeah, I would say those are 2 things I kind of do specifically for Elias, because that was for his Heaven Day. We do the toy drive because he got his greatest gift walking into eternity. So we're
Aw.
going to share the gift and the light to families that are walking through their darkest
For sure.
That's right.
moments.
Yeah.
But I would say probably where my real passion is the ECMO families. Being
Explain what that
Yeah.
is.
What is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
ECMO is the life support that he was on.
Okay.
It's basically like the last ditch effort. So there's 2 different kinds, and the one he was on was for his lungs. So his lungs were not working. So basically, this machine took his blood, oxygenated it, and put it back into his body. So his lungs just didn't have to.
Wow.
That was the
Interesting.
tube thing I was talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
Goes
tube
in-
that it was in his
Oh.
neck.
It was like
that's crazy.
Yeah, and what was wild was, so there's 2 tubes that go in and out, and you could see the blood that comes out. That was like really dark purple, like really like
Like
rice
no
look-
oxygen.
none. And then what's going in is like this bright red. So like you could see how bad it was.
Yeah. Wow.
But going from being on the oncology floor, there is so much support. There's so many foundations. Like you're constantly getting stuff. You're constantly feeling supported.
Especially a children's hospital.
Yeah,
too.
there's that community there.
Mhm.
But once we were transferred to the PICU and then we were put on ECMO, there really wasn't. You feel even more isolated because with cancer's cancer, you know, even if it's different types, it's kind of generally the same,
Yeah.
path.
Processes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's different, but it's similar.
Mhm.
Where with people on ECMO, there's different reasons. It could be a baby born too early, a child needing a heart transplant, or like us, you know, organ failure. So there's no communication. There's no community. There's no support. Like the hospital staff does a really great job. At least our experience was that. I know that's not always the case. But I saw the difference so one thing I did it started off with the toy drive was I wanted to include the ECMO families, but that kind of became a year-round thing. It just didn't feel right just to do it in October. So I have partnered up with the ECMO team there at Cook's, and I make ECMO baskets for the families of just things that we used that helped get us through, because there's really nothing to do but sit in a room.
Yeah.
'cause you can't. We couldn't hold him. Like we couldn't feed him. Like
I
he
mean, I
was-
couldn't even clip his fingernails.
Yeah.
Like
that's
change his diaper.
Wow.
That's
You
depressing.
weren't allowed. Like I had to get permission to lay in bed with him, and I was told no
Oh.
multiple times. You learned which like staff members were comfortable with it.
Oh, yeah.
Like you couldn't bathe them. Like
What's the reason? Just because all the
well,
tubing?
yeah, safety wise, and then God forbid a code or something. Like they need to be able to drop the bed
Oh,
and do
yeah.
all the things. But if something were to happen to him, like he get bumped and the tube or whatever.
He's just so delicate.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like that's on them ultimately. So it's what they feel comfortable
Liability
enough. Yeah.
wise.
Those are the few times I did lay in bed with him. Like, though I'm glad I had those. I'm a people pleaser. I don't like stirring the pot. So if I know I'm going to get told no, I probably am not going to ask.
He did stir the pot a few times already.
One time.
A
Hey,
few times.
one thing I know, you got to advocate. All right.
Okay. No, I'm going to tell this story since you brought it up.
Please do.
Okay. So Elias had been on ECMO 2 days.
Yeah.
Like, and he's in bad shape. Like, he was in bad shape the whole time, like, if I'm being honest. But he was 1 foot in the grave at that point, and I'm not being, like, dark or anything. It's the reality of it. And I was sleep deprived because up till that point, I had slept in the room with him. I had not been apart from him, like, this whole time. And I was staying up till, like, 11 o'clock so I could do, like, the nightly rounds. And then I'd be back down in the room by 4 o'clock in the morning so I could hear from the night nurses how his night was. Like, I wasn't just down there a few hours ago. And, like, I'd be there for the morning rounds. And
So you're a Velcro mom, too.
I wasn't always, but, like, when your baby's on life support.
Hey,
Yeah.
you had every right to be a Velcro mom.
I always swore I wasn't going to be that mom. And then here we are. But I was, like, super sleep deprived. And, you know, you're just kind of carrying the weight of it. And with the oncology stuff, like, I was pretty well educated. Like, they did their part of telling me what drugs did what to expect, all this. Like, I was a part of the medical team. And then once he's down there, like, you're kind of an outsider. Like, you're there just for consent. And so I'm, like, down there, and this nurse, she ends up being our favorite by the end of it, which is just ironic. But that day she had made so many comments about she was working hard. Like, he was making her work hard for that extra overtime and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm just like, I really don't, you deserve every penny, 100%, like, give you a raise, but I don't need to hear about it. Like, do your job, make sure my child's okay.
Right.
And, like, I'm glad you're getting supplemented, right? And so and then her and the other nurse, because there had to be 2 people in the room, one nurse for him and one for the machine. And they're bickering back and forth. And she just made several comments that day that just rubbed me wrong. Stress, sleep deprived, all the things, right? So I go upstairs. No, but back up a little bit. He was the isolation king because he had every infection possible. Like, it just wasn't funny. He's still known. Like, when I go up there, the doctors are like, oh yeah, the isolation king. And that was him. He was always getting sick.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So on top of cancer, we had E. coli twice. We had chicken pox, all the things. Yeah. So anyways, infectious disease came down and they changed the medicine. But all of his primary doctors who knew him and his history were gone because it was a Saturday. And she came down and changed she's like, he doesn't need this strong of a antibiotic. So I changed him to this. Well, all I heard was, like, there's no way you read his chart in enough time. You just told me he didn't need it, but he is very infection prone. They had him on that for a reason. Why are you changing things? So I went upstairs to our oncology nurses and I was like, can y'all see why they did that? Like, y'all know him at this point. We've been through this for 9 months. Do you agree with that? And so, like, they're reading through it. I'm like, okay, she used the wrong words and, like, explained it to me. I felt better. So I go back downstairs, right? And I notice a whelp on his leg, but he's still laying the same way when I left. So I knew it wasn't like they just turned him and it wasn't like a pressure thing.
Yeah.
So I called the nurse over and I was like, hey, do you know what this is? And she, like, touched it, like, put pressure on it. She's like, well, it blanches, and goes right back to doing what she was doing. Well, you know, mom and me, I'm, like, scanning him and he's covered. It wasn't just the one big one.
Wow.
Like, he was covered all the way up to his head. And I was like, hey, like, there's a lot. And she goes, oh, we gave him blood and we didn't pre-med him, which we discovered he had an allergy to blood. So to get blood product, he needed Tylenol and Benadryl.
Man.
They didn't do that.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's this whole thing. And at that point, I'm done. Like, that, there's a thing in his chart. Like, there's a whole procedure for giving something you're allergic to, right? So I'm like Jonathan laughs because when I get mad, my head starts wagging.
Yeah.
As I'm sure y'all just noticed.
Do you get real ghetto?
Yeah. And so he's like, your ponytail? Like,
Ponytail's fine.
so he's like, you need to go upstairs. Like,
You need to chill out.
You're
Yeah.
like, I'm about to take out my earrings.
No.
We're about to
and
go to town.
up to this point, I have been best friends with all the nurses. Like, there has been no problem. I was not that parent. I brought them cookies, coffee, all the things. Like, they're caring for my kid. I'm not going to cause a scene, right?
Yeah.
And he sends me upstairs, but what he doesn't know is those nurses are even more protective because they know they know the process of what happens. Like, they had to give Elias blood multiple times.
Yeah.
So like they know, and they saw me and they're like, what happened? And so I'm telling them, and one of the nurses, she's from England, and so she has a very thick accent. And she's like, oh,
Yeah.
no, like, you go down there or I'm going down there. And then the other one was like, I will fight her. I will. So either you go to charge or we will be down there.
I love that.
Cook's Children death match.
I love that.
Nurses.
Yeah, they were not
crazy.
happy. So I was like, oh God, Jonathan is going to be so
I just
mad.
started something.
He's going to see me. Because they're like, no, like, that's very serious. Like, you have to, like, the computer prompts you twice. You have to click yes twice to give that to him. And they're like, that's a very serious, like, mess up.
Yeah. The
So
thing with nurses, you can't mess up.
Yeah, and like that's when I went to charge, I was like laughing because I'm uncomfortable and like awkward. And our room was right across from the charge desk. And it's a glass window.
Oh.
So like that was real awkward. And I'm sure Jonathan was like, oh my God, what is she doing?
Why would that be David? Why would that be
would
him?
me.
Yeah.
I'm like, you need to back up. My kid is on life support.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out of here swinging. Okay.
I will slap the RN out of you. You better.
No, so I just went and I was like, hey, like, I understand it's stressful. Mistakes happen. Like, I'm not mad. I was mad, but like I handled it with grace to her. And I was just like, I just need to know, like, what can we do to make sure this does not happen again?
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. He's medicated now, but like, this cannot happen. And she was great. She was like, oh, like very apologetic, and like she got it and handled it well. But I let her know, like, I don't want them to get in trouble. I just really want to make sure like this won't happen again because he's already 1 foot in.
Yeah.
Like, there's no room for
he's
mistake.
already so delicate. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when Jonathan saw me, he was like, oh, what'd you do? I'm like, look, it was either me or the whole bone marrow team. So which would you rather?
Yeah.
I was a lot
Like,
I was
nicer.
protecting
I will burn
her.
this whole building down.
Yeah.
I have a question. Kind of going back to like self-awareness and vulnerability. Is there or was there a certain thought that you would have that you felt like too ashamed to like confess out loud? I know that's kind of a deep one, but like,
I mean, heaven seems really inviting. Not ever to where anything would happen, but it would be like, well, I mean, if I were to be in a car accident, I wouldn't be mad. We kind of had a health scare. It ended up being my thyroid, but we had a health scare, and I really had to think, like, would I go through treatment, or would I just, this is the best we've got, and at the end of the day, I'm ready to meet God and see my son. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, and Jonathan had talked some sense into me of like, you would do treatment.
yeah, you will fight for your life,
You
Missy
will.
girl.
Yeah. And it wasn't ever like I dreamed about death or anything like that, but just the thought of being reunited, you were united with him and being with God at the same time. That definitely had a season. I know the first blood drive, was it on his actual birthday? Yes, it was. Yeah. So it was 3 months after he died, we were celebrating his first birthday in heaven. And, things just seem crazier when you're emotional.
Of course.
And I think we had there was crazy drivers on our way to the thing. And I remember thinking, well, at least we're all together and we'll all be like, what a birthday present. And my sister let me know very quickly that wasn't funny. So thank you for laughing because I thought it was funny.
I want to say something to like make you feel more comfortable right now for sharing. But whenever I was pregnant, but I did not know I was pregnant yet, and my hormones were like going absolutely haywire, I would drive to work and have this thought, like as I'm going over the big bridge on to 35 to 20, like not that I wanted to kill myself, but I'd be like, oh my God, what if I like forget how to drive and just like drive off the bridge?
The intrusive thoughts.
Or yes, very, very intrusive thoughts. Or like, what if I just kept driving up to Oklahoma and into Canada? Like it was weird stuff like that.
I mean, we sold our house. So like how unstable can you be?
Well, that's how
What
I am
about
every
you,
time.
Jonathan?
Oh.
Or, I'm sorry, babe.
I was just gonna say that's how I am when I fly. I always think of the worst case.
He always thinks about like
I look out the
literally
window
crashing.
and I just think about what would happen to me, and that brings me that brings me a sense of comfort on the plane.
If you know
Because
that
I like
the
got
worst,
all the worst scenarios through, and I filtered them. So I'm like, all right, I'm good.
if you feel I get that too. Like someone like me coming from like having anxiety a lot in my life, like my mom would always kind of break it down. And she'd be like, what do you feel like is going to happen? Oh, I'm going to get sick and I'm going to throw up. Okay, what happens if you get sick and you throw up? I'm going to not be comfortable. And she's like, okay, but what happens if you're not comfortable? And she'd like bring me to that. And in some situations, it's like, okay, well, I would die. And then she's like, well, what would happen if you died? I was like, well, I guess I'll be with Jesus. I guess I'll be with my maker. So
just the process is very uncomfortable to think about.
Yeah. So, anyways, what about you?
You mind repeating that question again?
Yeah. So, what are some thoughts that you have or had that you might have been ashamed or embarrassed to share, but something that other people might have experienced before?
I get angry super easy. Like, I didn't really have anxiety that bad before all this, but now like I can flip like in a second. And like, dude, come on now.
I feel that.
That guy's he just cut you off. He didn't mean to. Like, I'll lose it. Like,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I have. That's what I dealt with. Definitely a lot that first year after. But intrusive thoughts, it's kind of the same what she was saying. Like, it happens, big deal. Like, But yeah, it's a lot of the same.
Yeah.
What she was saying.
I feel like when you grieve, you like really, your emotions are like times 10.
Yeah.
Oh,
So everything is magnified. So, I mean, when you go through trauma, when you go through like things that I've had to face in therapy, like my anger skyrocketed more because I was always trying to say, I'm not that person. I can't be like that. That's not who the Bible tells me to be. That's not who I need to be.
You reject yourself.
You learn to reject yourself, but then you reach a point where you recognize your feelings matter.
Yeah.
So then you just let yourself feel.
I remember for a while, you couldn't even say that statement. His therapist was like, I want you to say this.
It took like
my feelings matter.
It took 5 times.
And you couldn't do it.
And on that 4th one, I started breaking down. And then on the 5th one, I said it, bawling my eyes out.
That's when you know you're hitting something. Like for me in therapy, whenever we start touching on something, I'm like you, Lianna. Like I run. I like I get real.
What's that sound?
I start getting just like very uncomfortable, and so that's when I know, okay, I'm getting somewhere.
I start making really dark jokes. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm
Yes,
not doing okay.
that's how-
Maybe there's something here that I need to work on.
Yes. I know.
Jonathan's usually like chill.
She follows an Instagram page.
I don't anymore. They're not active.
Well, she did, and it was like dark humor cancer moms or something.
Yeah, it was a
like
cancer
that.
mom.
That's
and so
crazy.
she had all of
And
these cancer memes,
it
and
gets
I'm like,
wild on there.
100%. I had to send them to him, and he'd be like, don't send that to me.
You're like, no, absolutely not.
So I'm like, okay, I'll go find my other cancer mom. And so we would send them to each other.
David made a joke about his sexual abuse the other day, and I just looked at him and I was like, are you kidding me right now? What are you doing?
It's a trauma response. It's okay.
It is
I
a trauma
really think it
response.
is. Yeah.
You just got to find your broken people too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a trauma response. And at the same time, I just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm
You've
dealing
worked
with
through
this.
that,
I'm
yeah.
worked through it. So it doesn't hurt.
It's
as
not
much
like
as
an
it-
unresolved trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So in the context of church, what y'all have gone through, do you feel like the church played the role that they needed to play in regards to being present with y'all as y'all went through the heartache and the pain and the grief, and how do we rebuild? How do we move on?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I remember right after he passed, like we're in the room, he's still in my arms. Pastor Tommy and Nora walked in,
Wow.
and they didn't, I'll never forget, they didn't try to comfort. They didn't try to, Bible verse it up. They
Right.
just
No.
said, this is what keeps us up at night too.
Yeah.
And he's going to get you through it. But like, we don't understand this either. And there was no pressure to be better.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Just right where you were, just
Yeah.
right in that mud puddle.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's something special to hear
Of course.
because I'm connected to a lot of churches, and the way they respond is like, if you mention that you're hurting, they're like, ooh,
You got to
you
pray
need to
more.
pray.
Mm-hmm.
What does the word say? And it's like, that's great. Like, those are great tools, 100%.
Yeah.
That's what got me through and is getting me through.
Mm-hmm.
But not being quick to rush that and just admitting,
Mhm.
like, we don't get it either.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is one thing that Calvary's done really well for us.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome. One thing I remember is, of course, whenever you go through a loss, people try to do what they can to comfort you, which we know where their hearts are. Like, we receive it, but a lot of the time it's like I wanted to be like, trust me, I will crawl back to Jesus. Like I know Jesus. I love Jesus. Like,
Right. My shoe's not with him right now. Or
yeah.
maybe it is. But
yeah,
either way, like, we're strong enough to get through it.
For sure.
Like, when I'm mad at Jonathan, we might be mad. Works
Yeah.
out at the end, Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly,
One of the best advice that we got going into marriage, or probably for me, it's the best advice, was build your marriage on grace.
Mhm.
Because y'all will go through some crazy stuff. But if you're able to show each other grace, there's nothing that y'all can't navigate together. And I think that has been my sustain. And every time that we've had moments where we're like, well, shoot, what do we do now? Or, like, how do we move forward with this? What do we do with this? And I feel like, or whenever Emily does, when she messes up, as always,
excuse me.
and like, how do I show her grace?
You better be respectful, sir.
No, but it's
No, he's not wrong though. He's not wrong. I feel like David extends me grace probably a lot more than I extend him.
well, because that advice, like, it rings in my head every time there's a tough moment that we're going through. Like, how can we show each other grace in this moment? Because she's, again, what you said, she's not my enemy, and I'm not her enemy.
Mm-hmm.
This is my, as we millennials say, this is my person.
yeah,
You know?
my lobster went from Friends.
I don't know.
Have y'all seen? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I feel like a lot of our listeners will understand what I said when
Absolutely.
I said my lobster. But
But I thank y'all for sharing that, because I think it's important to know that anyone that's listening, just how beautiful, maybe not how beautiful, but how much better it is to know that you're not alone when your church is present with you. Especially when we talk about pastors. I think about when I went through my porn addiction, and I remember we sat down with Tommy and Denora and we talked about it, and Denora was like, this doesn't disqualify you from God wanting to use you, and they both recommended me an addictions program that I went into, and I completed it. And I remember that night, the ones who were graduating, you kind of give a speech, and I said, my pastors helped save my soul,
and they showed up.
and they were there that night,
Yeah.
So I think it's a testament to just how beautiful our pastors are.
Yeah.
You know, that they're present in the hard times and they're present in the victories too.
And they don't try to fix you.
Yeah.
You know, they
For
just
sure.
are with you. So Tommy and Denora, if you're listening, we love you.
Yes.
What would y'all say to another couple or maybe single, just anybody that's going through what y'all had walked through and are walking through? What is like one of the biggest things that you would say? I know earlier you said show each other a lot of grace. So that, but do you have anything?
For the couple or for the just individual?
Either.
And how to get through it?
Either.
I would say just be honest. Don't feel the need to sugarcoat it. I know there's appropriate times and places for things, but especially in prayer, being honest, even if you're mad at him, just telling him, because he has this great way of being like, I know you're mad, but one piece of advice we got in the room planning his funeral, and I'll never forget it. It was probably what freed me to do that was God knows you better than that. So say what you need to say because he knows you better than that. And on those moments when, you know, we grew up very religious.
Extremely.
Oh, really?
That was one of my questions that I was going to ask earlier. Like, what was your upbringing like?
We grew up in a Pentecostal home.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
So, you know, we
Apostolic
kind
Pentecost.
I'm glad to see you in pants.
Yeah.
Go you.
yeah, there was we went through that separation engaged. So that was a fun transition.
Wait,
But
oh, like when y'all
From
were
the
engaged,
church.
y'all. I see.
yeah, we
Okay.
went through a church split, the whole thing. But
No drama at all.
None.
Our wedding was the first time people who had left the church came back to the church.
Wow.
Oh.
And the same pastor married us. Yeah, so there was a lot there that we had already learned to walk through. But
yeah.
where was I going with
That's
that?
for another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't even touch on the religious trauma.
Where was I going with that? Oh, you know,
Advice,
growing
yeah.
up like that, you didn't dare tell God. There was
Right.
that fear of God almost went too far
Mm-hmm.
to where you couldn't. You'd almost think you could deceive God. Like
It was
God
an
doesn't
unhealthy
know. Yeah,
fear. Yeah.
and hearing that, whenever I would feel that, like, oh, I can't tell God, that shame of
Mhm.
I know you're good, but this doesn't feel good. So how do I reconcile the two? How do I
Mhm.
hold the tension between
Right.
the life sucks, but you're good?
Right.
I would hear those words. God knows me better than this. So let me just spitball it out.
Mhm.
And he can hear in between. He knows my heart enough to know.
Yeah. He
To
can
be-
fill in the blanks.
Yeah. And so that would be my place, is just trust God to fill in the blanks. You don't have to be happy with him. You can be offended by him,
Mm-hmm.
but just
He
let
can handle
him,
it. He can hold that tension.
Yeah, let him fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And don't be quick to heal. Like,
Mhm.
don't feel the pressure to be better,
Mm-hmm.
to move on.
Yeah.
Everybody says in this club that we're in, we don't move on, we move through.
Yes,
and-
that's good.
That's good.
But don't rush that moving through.
Mhm.
You've got to stay in it.
Mhm.
You got anything to add?
Yeah, we waiting on John.
Y'all
I know,
are,
he's so quiet.
y'all are intently staring into each other's eyes, and we're like, "What's going on here?" They're telepathically communicating.
We have been accused of that.
Yeah, they say that. A lot of times people say dumb things and they don't mean it to be dumb. I think the best thing I would say is I just want someone to listen. Like,
That part.
instead of being like,
Yep.
I'm sorry for your loss, like, I want you to ask me about his life. Like, what's his personality like? What did he like? What are the things?
Why do y'all
That's-
talk about frogs?
Yeah, like,
Oh yeah, I saw a post with frogs in it.
but yeah, that's more healing to me than saying like, oh, time will heal, like
Right.
stuff like that. But
Yeah. You're like, I'm not going to forget my child. I'd rather
Yeah.
talk about my child.
You're not going to remind me he
Yeah.
died. Like,
Yeah.
we already know that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
that did
wow.
happen.
Oh, wait, I had a second son?
Yeah, gosh. See, there's the humor
Yeah.
right there. I love it.
Oh, man.
That one guy asked, he's like, hey, did y'all try vitamin C?
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
if I-
man.
To cure cancer?
Yeah. He's like, yeah, it helps build
Stop.
immune systems.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't
Oh,
have,
thank
like-
you.
It's
You're-
just like, okay.
Your grandmother told me when Elias was on life support, because, you know, his lungs weren't working. She's like, well, have you tried like flipping him over and patting his back.
Oh.
I'm like, well, he has a tube in his lungs right now. I would get yelled at.
At some point, I think we need to differentiate faith from stupidity.
Yeah,
because they're not the same thing.
no, and that's the thing. Sometimes when you do choose like the medicine route, right? Which first of all, you get your child taken away if you don't do certain treatments,
right?
And there is that, like, God gives us wisdom and he gives the doctors knowledge.
Sure.
So I can
That's
still
good.
pray for a miracle and do the chemo treatment.
Right.
I like that. That's good.
And it doesn't mean, or, we asked people to wear masks or take their shoes off if they came in our house, different things, because he was so immune compromised.
Mm-hmm.
And, we did get a little bit of pushback, and it was like, look, it's not that I don't have faith. I'm not trying to be dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, also the whole mask thing too. It was like right after COVID, so people were like, "Oh
Very
yeah, they're
political.
mask
Yeah.
people."
Yeah.
Like, no, my baby's sick.
Yeah,
Like,
and
I would, like-
pre-COVID, that's what was required anyway. Like,
Right.
that wasn't new for cancer families, but because it was a political issue, we got a lot of pushback. And it's like, look, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, wear them, don't wear them. But if you're with my kid, you're gonna wear them.
Right. Or else you won't be with my kid.
Yeah,
Right.
and it was like, if y'all were outside and not holding him, like we weren't crazy, but we tried to be
Hold
wise.
the tape measure up the whole time you're
6
here,
feet
Right.
apart.
but,
Yeah.
Right.
But if you're inside, like, just be aware, like, y'all are functioning in the world. I know after we got out, like after he passed and I came home, I got sick because I had been so sheltered. Like, my immune system stopped working.
Right.
And the day of his funeral, I was so sick. So many people were so kind. Like, you didn't even look it. We didn't even know. But I, like, went home and slept for,
You're like pale
20
and all of
hours.
it. Yeah.
All
Oh
of
my
it. Couldn't talk. It was
gosh.
bad. It was just grief.
Yeah.
But
Well, that too.
Yeah.
All of it. Just your body. Something interesting, and I think I've shared this in a podcast episode before, but it was so game-changing for me whenever I learned from my therapist that you literally store grief at the base of your throat. So, like, have y'all noticed, like, your chest and, like, your throat will hurt whenever you get that overwhelming grief feeling?
yeah. Well, and
for
now I have
sure.
a thyroid issue I didn't have before. I
Wow.
never
Wow.
had it. And that's what I thought the symptoms I was experiencing was just grief, because it's
Wow.
mirrors like depression and grief.
I wonder
and
if it's
the
connected.
thing- Well, I looked it up, and Google will tell you anything you look
Yeah,
up.
right.
But it does say that the thyroid issue can be connected to trauma, and
Wow.
it's just interesting that I didn't have it before,
Yeah.
and now I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I learned pretty early on that my grief is more physical than
Yes.
emotional or spirit. Like, I still have all of that too,
Mm-hmm.
but I store it more physically than others do.
It's so hard for me
Yeah.
though. Like, I feel similar to you. I don't. So, being totally honest, I don't feel like we experience the same level of grief, but the small amount that we have, I feel like is physical,
yeah.
like 100%. And it makes me anxious
Mm-hmm.
because I already have health-related anxiety. And so, I feel like I'm constantly like tapping my chest
Mm-hmm.
or like massaging right here. Like, it's so weird. Like,
You have
but
one
a
of
lot
those
of it-
LED massagers?
no, but I
I
have
bought
like
one.
one of the, what is it? The little not
Okay.
amber, but
yeah. Is it jade?
jade.
Yeah.
A jade roller.
Yeah.
And I
You just sit there
it's
and
like,
massage it out.
But
Yeah.
also, I just like love stimuli too, because I feel like it's something with me since I'm like ADD, ADHD. I'm like always wanting like some sensation, So I'm like, oh goodness. Anyways, that kind of went down a weird,
It's all good.
weird path.
So I have two things I want to mention, and then we can end if we want.
Yeah.
My first thing is I just want to commend y'all for not staying quiet about
Yeah.
this. One of the things that we learned through the leading of the Holy Spirit the day that we found about the miscarriage, I remember the Holy Spirit telling me, do not stay quiet about this.
You can't.
Share
you
it.
can't.
And I just think sometimes you kind of question it, sometimes you kind of think, do we give too much information? Do we let people into way too deep into our house? And I just see how what y'all have gone through, and y'all have chosen to not stay quiet about it, but instead bring awareness to it and provide opportunities where where he can be remembered.
And you can proudly talk about him. It's not a hush hush.
Yeah.
Don't trigger us type
Yeah.
of situation,
And so I thank y'all so much for choosing not to stay quiet about it. I think grief for a lot of people remains quiet because no one chooses to want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And instead they kind of just store it up. And and your body will, like, what you don't speak, it will come out in your, like, through your body, through actions, And so I just thank y'all for that. The second thing is something that you brought up, Jonathan, which I think is so vital, is I just need somebody to just listen. Most of the time, people always want to have something to say. No one just wants to listen. And I love that some of the guys here at the church, when we went through what we went through, one of the guys texted me and he was like, yo, I have a really cozy recliner. If you just want to come over my house and just sit in silence, watch me watch the kids, and I love people who do that, because I think for us guys too, one of our biggest struggles is being heard and being understood, and sometimes we might struggle to express what we're feeling because we can't really articulate and have the proper words to label what we're feeling. And sometimes we get treated, I'm not saying the wives, I'm not trying to blame the wives, but I'm saying sometimes we get misinterpreted for being crazy, and that we're overreacting, and that we don't know what we're talking about. And we know exactly what we're talking about. Maybe we're just struggling to express and convey. And sometimes we just need, like, just in the context of husbands and just in the context of us as men do a crappy job of just listening to other men and just being present with other men. And so I think you bringing that up is not a coincidence. I think it's important to acknowledge that men need to do a better job of being present with other men, and that sometimes we just need somebody to just listen to us and just understand. Even if they don't understand, make the choice to just understand. I get it. I get what you're going through, and it's confusing, and I don't know what to tell you, so I just want to be present with you. So I just want to point that out, that's a really good thing that you brought up, because that's a big issue in the what do you call it, the bro sphere, is just being present with each other. And that's a goal of mine that I try to teach with a lot of younger guys here at church, is just learning to be vulnerable and being present with each other. And that just because you know the Bible, that doesn't mean that you have an answer, And so with the more wisdom that you gain, the more humility you need, And so those are my two points.
I have one last question. Why did Howie love frogs so much?
Ooh, there's a video. So the very last day he was home, we didn't know it was his last day home before he went to the hospital. It was actually a toad. It wasn't even a frog, but I got the whole tattoo and everything.
That's cool.
But I can't get a toad. I was like, no, I'm gonna do a frog.
Big old brown, doo-doo looking
lumps on it.
But there was one out in the front yard, and Ethan's terrified. Ethan doesn't want anything to do with frogs.
Well, we did stress no dirt with Howie because, cancer.
Yeah. Well,
so
he's the one out in the yard chasing it. So
Ethan's in my lap.
And so he was chasing it. And then at the very end of the video, he came up and it was almost like, are you proud of me, Dad? I did it. And he gave me a big old kiss, and it just
mocked me and everything because I screamed. And then he looked at Jonathan and was like, ew. Mocked me doing it.
Just in his little pull up out there, nothing else on.
Just a pull.
That was him. He was a little prankster. He would have been our trouble kid. He would have been our kid that we were which we already are prematurely graying.
That sent your blood pressure through the roof type of kid.
Yeah, he was a prankster.
He loved to play hide and seek, but he wouldn't hide behind something. He would just put his back flat to the wall because he didn't think he could see him.
He thought he just blended in.
He would always do that when I come home from work, and I was just
that's
so
one
of my
silly.
favorite memories.
Hide behind the fridge.
What he would do, yeah.
Hide behind the fridge.
Yeah, he would stand with his back to the fridge.
That is so silly.
To scare Dad.
Just not move, just stare straight at you.
And sometimes you'd forget, and you're looking, and he's
come
Like,
on, come
come
find
on.
me.
Yeah.
And then
Find me.
Oh, where's
Yeah.
Howie?
Where's Howie? You're like, okay, 99, 100.
Yeah, but you like sometimes forget until he would give you this look like, hello,
Of course, he's
Like, you
bald.
have
He
to
has no
find
hair.
me.
Yeah.
So it's just
skinny because he's not
Funny.
eating.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sounds like he still found joy despite everything
Yeah.
he was going through. His
He
little
had
body.
So one of the infection things, you could probably explain this better than me, but he had this big open wound on his back, and he had to have this like, basically it was like a vacuum, right? And it
Wound vac.
had like a big long cord with a bag on it, and he would just take off running through the house, like does not care. It'd get caught on the corner.
Oh,
He'd keep
no.
going. I'm
That's
like,
crazy.
dude.
Stressing y'all out.
Even Ethan would just walk around him so sweet, caring for his little brother. He'd
Oh.
like, Howie, like you're getting too far away from your bag. It's gonna. And he did rip it out a couple times.
Wow.
I had to replace that. That was not.
Yeah.
That was not pretty.
No.
No, they had put like the wound vac on it to keep it like dry because all the
Dry.
moisture would just like make the infection worse.
That was a
Oh,
part of that E.
But,
coli I told y'all about.
Yeah.
golly. Well, thank y'all so much for coming on.
Yes.
I definitely feel like I know y'all better,
hmm
and I love it. So,
And I'm glad that y'all got a little comfortable from when we started.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank y'all so much. Thank y'all for gifting us your vulnerability and coming. And I know that sometimes these things are not easy to talk about, but we're just honored that you chose to want to come and talk about it with us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We will see y'all next week.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Bye.